yeah, 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 yeah. Going through changes, come from different faces.
Hello, and welcome to the Struggles to Success podcast, the podcast which helps you use struggles to become better, stronger, and more successful. Struggles are gifts, and in this podcast, we invite special guests to share their lessons, to share their experience of converting a struggle into a success. You're all very welcome. I am Dr. Emmanuel. I am the host of this podcast, and I'm really excited to be joined by our special guest for this episode, our first episode in the podcast. Our guest is Dr. Moka Lantum, who is a dear friend and also a very, very experienced leader in healthcare. Dr. Moka Lantum is a founder and CEO of Checkups Medical, a inspirational healthcare company based in Kenya and Sudan that is changing access to healthcare for blue collar workers, taking healthcare to them at work, at schools, on farms, and getting nurses to take healthcare to them for a very affordable fee. So completely revolutionizing care in Kenya and in Sudan. Dr. Moka is also an Ashoka Fellow, so he's a social entrepreneur and a group of people who completely revolutionize issues in healthcare or other parts of life. He's also a two-time award winner of the Innovation in Healthcare Award. He's a serial entrepreneur, as I've mentioned. He has set up two multi-million-dollar healthcare companies in Africa, working across Kenya and South Sudan. He has trained in Cameroon, also trained in Sweden, and trained in the US. So he's really a global citizen. And as you can see from his dressing, he's a tribal leader, and he's also a tribal leader rank of the sub chief from the Saw clan in Cameroon. So he's also you would say, a chief, a respected traditional leader. So it's a pleasure, Dr. Lantum, to have you on this program.
Well, thank you, Dr. Manuel. The pleasure is mine. What an honor to be your first podcast guest. Thank you.
Thank you. And trust me, Dr. Lantum is somebody who knows what struggles are, and he knows how to convert a struggle into success. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, sharing his own experience. And I would like to start by saying struggles are gifts. And most successful people that we all know have had a significant struggle in their life that they've used to become more successful. A great example is Nelson Mandela. He went to prison in South Africa. He suffered, but he turned that around and became president of South Africa and got rid of apartheid. Struggles are gifts. And so, Dr. Lantum, let's start by just telling us what's your experience of struggles? Have struggles helped you? Are they gifts? What's your own view on that?
Well, thank you, Dr. Emmanuel. I would say the topic is paradoxically near and dear to my heart, because the reality of an entrepreneur, let alone an entrepreneur in the African market, is one of struggles. The struggles over the last 10 years since I decided that I wanted to do this work in the African market to develop a healthcare system of the future, I have had my fair share of struggles. The struggles have been at the level of the regulatory. On the regulatory side, there are struggles. On the financial side, there are struggles. On the emotional side, there are struggles. On the staffing and human resource side and the legal side, there are struggles. On the professional side, there are struggles. Sometimes even sleeping, you're struggling. So, needless to say, for what I do, struggles have become the norm. And so the effect of norming in the face of struggles is that you get to a point where you expect adversity and you expect success, and you become numb to both, which I think is a big risk that we try to manage. And so I would say the key lesson here is to quickly recognize the struggle and accept it, and recognize success and celebrate it, right? Because the reward of success is really what keeps you going, that emotional reward, right? And I would say both are a state of mental or emotional, it's an emotional state. It's the perception of struggle is an emotional state. The perception of success is an emotional state. And let me start by giving you the lowest point in my struggles. I would term this struggle the lesson from the jail. In October 26th, 2022, I had just finished my board meeting. I was sitting in a hotel in South Sudan. And I go to the front desk to pay my bill because I was supposed to check out the next day. I walk back into my room, and then I hear 6 people at my door in my hotel room. I wasn't sure who they were. I resist opening. The force opened my door, and I was faced with armed militia from the National Security Intelligence Operation, who were there to arrest me for being the largest drug dealer in the state of South Sudan. I was detained, and that happened around 9 o'clock in the evening. I was detained in a cell, isolated until about midnight. Then I was transferred to the maximum security jail for political prisoners in South Sudan. If you want to read about a place called the Blue House, you're welcome to do so. But I quickly found myself from a meeting with investors to the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the earth, if you can put it that way. Topless, without shoes or socks, with a pair of jeans, in the cell, sitting next to people who were either political captives or were actually criminals who had committed some of the most hideous crimes. And I found myself in that group. And I said to myself, how did I get here? Now, talk about not being prepared for a struggle. I was not prepared for that. It's a long story short. If I narrate the whole event, then it could take us a whole podcast. But bottom line is, I found myself from a 5-star hotel in a city, having a board meeting with investors, within a couple of hours, at the bottom, topless, in jail, without a bed, without a bed sheet, my head on the floor, and I was jailed for 4 nights and 5 days. Eating once a day, very extreme conditions. And that to me was a moment of reflection to say, what is the message in all of this narrative here? And I'd say I became out stronger. Why? Because one of the inmates said to me, what has not killed another person will not kill you. That was his way of telling me that we are here under these conditions, but we are alive. And so the promise that I'm giving you as the head of the jail, who's been there for 15 years, is that you'd be alive. It's going to be tough, but you're going to be alive. And so the first lesson that I would say is that in the journey of humanity, right, everybody's going through a struggle. And for some reason, many of us are alive, right? And so the question becomes, how do we convert that into the gift? And from my perspective, that going to ground zero was the biggest gift. because it prepared me for my next level of leadership, whereby I've had to take extreme measures to make sure that those around me are people who are properly vetted, to make sure that all my social media communications are very well guarded, because that's a level of consciousness that I have to bring into the next phase of the leadership journey that I'm about to embark on. I have to be very conscious about and anticipate gunfire from any direction, because when you become successful in the African market, you become a target. What I experienced was a targeted intervention by a competition who framed me as a drug dealer, as a way to take down my business in South Sudan.
Mhm.
So it was not a mistake. It was a calculated effort by some persons who deemed that I was too successful and I had made money from doing COVID tests, and they felt that would be the way to take me down. So, so I would say the first thing that I've learned at that point was that what does not kill another person will not kill you. And so that struggle, there are people who go through deep emotional stuff, they are not dead. There are people who go through deep financial stuff, they are not dead. There are people who have huge labor contract issues, they are not dead. The question becomes, how do you rearrange your mind to address the order of the day? And if you convert the opportunity, in the struggle, into an opportunity, or the challenge, the adversity, then it, in a way, creates new business opportunities. So in my case now, I have better relationships with the national security organs in the country. I have better working relationships with the US security system in South Sudan. And it has created an opportunity for me to now, be in a way more comfortable as an investor in the country than I was before the unfortunate incident that happened on October 26, 2022. It's a day I'll never forget.
Wow, that is very, very profound. And as you say, we're having a conversation. I mentioned Nelson Mandela, and I didn't know about your story. It just came to me to mention Nelson Mandela's story, and you mentioned a very, very, very deep and frightening struggle, something that anybody in any part of the world will make their heart sink in that state, and that is really what the struggle is about. You already shared some really useful lessons about how it actually helped to make you stronger, leaving that that incident, and now making you even putting in a better position to be successful with the healthcare business in South Sudan, in relationships with the government, and also you're now alert to potential hazards that may come, and you're prepared for them. And so, really, thank you for sharing that story and that experience. I wonder how did previous struggles prepare you to overcome this one? This was clearly a major thing. How did previous one help you? Do you think it worked because you were trained, because you had others, and consciously, unconsciously, you've developed that skill, that vital skill of dealing with adversity?
Yes, my first consciousness about struggle, especially struggle at the leadership level, struggle as an executive. The first lesson came when I was doing my graduate work at Harvard. And we had a lesson on leadership with no other than the CEO of the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And so I expected him to come and talk about leadership as, what's your mission statement? What is your vision statement? How do you lead your people, create calm and peace? He said, no, that's not what we're here to talk about. I want to tell you about what it means to be an executive, especially an executive in healthcare. He stood up, went to the board, and wrote an equation of leadership. And the equation was, if you got some, I lost some, and my goal is to get it back. And he says that is the call to leadership in healthcare and in any business. If you lose market share, if somebody gains market share, that means your business has lost some market share, and your goal as the CEO is to get it back. If you have lost funding from an investor or from a donor, or you have lost business from a client, that means somebody has eaten your cake, and your goal is to get it back. So it unveiled or removed the mask of we're not walking into the C-suites being nice. It's about gaining market share. And gaining market share means you are taking from somebody, and that person is not going to look at it kindly. And so it's now 10 years that, that was 2011, 2012, when we went to that training. And the question becomes of the leadership class was, what are the tools and what are the skills you need to have to survive in the C-suite? It is worse than seen in the movies. When you get to the top, everybody wants your position. So people would undercut you. You have to be ready for those struggles. Now, everyone would pounce on every mistake you make. If your financial quarter does not meet the target, the board would be on your head, instigated by maybe some of your staff. If you make the wrong promotion or delay to fire somebody, other people would be on your neck. So it's at a certain level of performance, I would say high stakes performance, it's about trade-offs. And once as you understand that, then it's like getting into the arena, expect to be punched, and you have to throw punches. That's just the name of the game. And I use that analogy of throwing punches because not to say it's about violence, but it is to understand that struggles are part and parcel of executive leadership. That's just what it boils down to. It's not a pretty thing. And that's why the mortality of some executives, as soon as they step down or they retire, their mortality rates are extremely high. That's why despite the amount of wealth that they may amass, many of them are not doing well mentally, emotionally, and physically. It's just very stressful. And so, so when I look at the journey from that point on, I know that in each engagement where we're looking at business, I'm a potential target as much as the deal on the table is a target. And so you get used to, and part of the leadership journey is getting used to managing your emotions through that process, which helps you negotiate the right deal, create the right partners, look for the right kind of financing to be able to help you through the process. Some of the most hostile engagement you can have as an entrepreneur is at the board level. When you have shareholders who are saying, we've put in our money in the business, give us results. It's not a pretty conversation. They are gunning for you, and some are really willing to kind of throw you under the bus. So I would say, from my bias of executive leadership is that it is a good executive leader is one who anticipates the fire, plans for it, looks for the right partners who can help divert the attention away from themselves so that they are protected and then figure out how to build a business despite those adversities. I would share with you was the CEO of Tufts University. And we asked her what was her biggest struggle as the CEO. Her biggest struggle was to convince the city of Boston to move a flower bed that was obstructing the ability of an ambulance to come into the emergency room and to get the city to approve the removal of a flower bed which was affecting patient care.
Oh, you won't imagine that.
You would imagine that. And she said that issue went all the way to the governor's desk, and she even had to call on political forces to get the city to authorize zoning, is change in the zoning policy that allowed her to move that flower bed. That flower bed was obstructing the ability of ambulances to go in and out smoothly, and that was affecting their turnaround times of emergency patients. You would think a letter would get that bed to be removed, but the political forces saw her as, if she was successful in her mission at Tufts University as a CEO, that meant some people would look bad in the political structure of the town, and they fought her tooth and nail. Obviously, there were other interested parties. There are so many cases of those kinds of challenges that are wrapped in regulatory policy, financial deal structure, or even just just dirty tricks. There's another example I'll give you in terms of how important it is for persons who aspire to executive leadership, how important it is for them to be very astute. This is the founder of CVS. I happen to be friends with his son, the biggest pharmaceutical, one of the networks in the US. The founder always had two versions of a contract and walked into meetings with two versions of the contract. One he had in hand, the other he had in a briefcase. In most cases, the real contract was in the briefcase, the fake contract in his hand. And if he got to the deal table and he had that instinct that somebody was trying to pull a fast one on him, he would literally walk out of the meeting, leave that contract on the table, and walk away with his briefcase. Or play the game vice versa, leave his briefcase and walk away with the other version, depending on the situation, just to buy time so he can think about the deal. All to say that we have to be ready for struggles in order to be successful. It is part and parcel of the game. Very, very profound. And in the book, which is in the background here, which I published last year, called From Struggles to Success, Your Struggles Can Make You Better, Stronger, and More Successful, is exactly what I go through in the book with examples from my own personal experience. And it's part of life, as you say, it's part of executive leadership and with your experience, and part of entrepreneurship, but it's really part of life. And I'm sure there are so many other struggles that you've gone through as part of your career, part of your growth as a person, that has helped you prepare you for all the struggles, and the struggle which you described last year in South Sudan. You also mentioned about following your instinct in some of the examples. And something we don't always do, don't we? Because we always want to see the logic, and we also want to see everything make sense. And that's something that I haven't thought about before, how you develop that sense of instinct when you deal with adversity. And I wonder whether you wanted to comment about that a bit more, because it would appear that people who are very good at with the skill of converting struggle into success also use their instinct a lot, because they've had experience and they have sort of emotional intelligence. They can sense when there's something not right. What are your thoughts about that? I would say, unfortunately, that instinct component is not taught in business schools and not served in many leadership firms, but that's definitely a very key part of what makes somebody rise to the top of the pyramid. I'll tell you one situation where my instinct failed to kick into high gear. This was in 2014, 2015. We had launched, our first company was a technology company. We're doing software for hospitals. We had set up in over 60 hospitals and had just secured financing from the German Development Corporation, which was contingent on us having certain contracts in place. I had a business partner. She happened to be female, Kenyan female. And on June 12th, 2014, I traveled to the US. And 2 days later, she decided to move all the employees from the company and hire them under another company. And in that way, try to take over the software development team away from our corporation. So literally within 48 hours, I was with a shell company.
Wow.
We had the potential financing in place. I had no employees. All the employees had resigned and moved to her own company to develop a software because she had just got a clause in the contract said you needed to have a hospital system to track commodities in the, she was doing dialysis centers. So she needed software to track all the commodities in the dialysis center as part of the contract. Rather than subcontract that business to a contract to the company where she was part of, she decided to move the whole team to her company. Now, where did my instincts fail? Before departing, it was a conversation, we're having a conversation as usual, that was like, okay, well, what do we do about this contract? But I was picking up signals of non-commitment, non-committal postures around how we are going to execute the contract for this project that she had been awarded. And there were signals, so many subtle signals. But the only thing I did was that before leaving Kenya, I removed certain documents from my office. Something just said remove those documents. But I could have gone through, done other things to protect the business, which I did not. Right? So literally, I was picking up signals from a partner, and I brushed off those signals. I can't put them quite in words, but I felt awkward. And then later on, 48 hours later, to realize that all the staff have moved to her company was like, I felt in a way, I was disappointed with myself because I could have anticipated that move and done what would have been necessary to protect the business. I did not. And that to me was the first business that I almost lost. But the benefit about it, talking about success, was we were at a point where we were deciding, would we do software for public hospitals or for private hospitals? And her strength was in government tenders. My strength is in developing private sector solutions, fee-for-service solutions. And so we had a strategic misunderstanding in terms of the direction of the business. She was looking at the opportunity to say, we can grow this business by contracting our services to the government and applying for tenders is zero risk, but you could apply for 2 years and you don't get any revenue. My view about it is that a business has to generate some money every day. So let's go direct to consumer. And the financing we got from the German Development Corporation was to equip hospitals, put in all the software, train the staff, and they'll be paying us a per patient fee. So I looked at a strategy where we're going to be paid on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so talking about the struggle, when that happened, we went from 24 developers down to 0. I succeeded in getting one back, saved the software, and now was able to grow the company in the private sector. And we moved from just having a big tender with the government to setting up the system in 60 hospitals, which led to the first over $1 million worth of sales within a couple of years. So that struggle, I did not invest any time in a legal battle to fight what had happened. I accepted that challenge and grew the business from 2015 to 2016. And I would say that was, in a way, a blessing.
That turned out to be a blessing for you. And probably a lesson, as you said, lesson in terms of using your instinct. And there was something you also said there about you chose your battles. You decided not to invest any effort in the legal struggle with that particular individual, but you simply pivoted and did something different. Again, that is not a skill that many people have. The most common approach will be to lay everything down and confront that certain individual and drop everything, to fight it. But you seem to have pivoted and just use what is around you to go in a different direction, which turned out to be more productive. What made you do that?
Well, I think that is a very good question. And hindsight is always a teacher. The bottom line is that when you think about adversity, you have to be guided by your purpose. You have to be guided by an overarching principle. And so my purpose was, I want to build software that solves real healthcare issues. And so the first thing was that whatever she did, if I were looking at it purely from a cash perspective, I want to make money, I would have been tempted to fight. But my view was, well, go do you, and I do me. And so my purpose is what guided my decision. What you have done does not take away from my purpose. It delays what it is that we could do, but it makes it easier for me to pursue my purpose, which was, if we can set up this software in hospitals, then we can look at the supply chain of commodities, look at create early warning signals in terms of new disease trends, because we were a first mover in the electronic health record system in the Kenya market, in the hospitals. So I looked at that and I stayed focused on that opportunity. And so I would say being grounded in your purpose is a very key part of what it is that you want. Otherwise, you fight battles that you don't need to be fighting, right? So that's one. Secondly, is that her move was a power move, because she felt that in case I fought legally, she could turn the legal system on me. And it would have been a lose-lose proposition. So I didn't fall for that bait at all.
Oh, that's really also right? really powerful. Yeah.
Now, I'll give you another example whereby in 2021, we were the fastest and top 3 providers of COVID testing in Kenya. Our competition tried to get into our space, and they created a competitive, they connived with Ministry of Health officials, and they suspended our COVID testing services. Long story short, I made a calculated move and I sued the government of Kenya for having affected our business on constitutional basis. Now, in this case, why I sued the government was based on, again, what I felt was, I was guided by my moral compass. I said, we are offering a service that is helping people during a pandemic. We were the first company to test all passengers on an airline in the whole of the global world, the whole world, the first to test all passengers on a plane KLM flight 3 hours before departure. The European Union has just passed a regulation whereby people needed to be tested 2 to 3 hours before boarding a plane. We were the first to complete that testing for a KLM flight that left Nairobi on January 6th to Amsterdam. And even the KLM CEO sent a letter to us congratulating us for successfully showing that it can be done. So we went to the ministry and said, we are helping people travel. We're helping open the economy. We're helping, and we were doing COVID testing at the fastest rate at the cheapest price in the market, sending people to homes. And if you called us, we're not only doing it for travelers, we're doing it for people who were sick. Now, businesses were being affected. Banks were calling us and saying, one of our tellers has tested positive. We need the whole bank tested within the next 2 hours to decide whether or not to shut down or to maintain operations. That's how critical we were for the local businesses. And so when we were shut down, I took it upon myself and said, that is unfair. That's an unfair targeting. That's unfair targeting. And so we filed a lawsuit against the government in the Constitutional Court, which was the best decision I ever made. And the matter is still yet to be resolved, but even the president of the country knew me personally because it was an issue that raised national and international eyebrows. Say, how can you shut down a business and investor in a country just because of the local political games that people want to play? And so what I'm trying to point is that looking at the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish is really ultimately decides how you're going to react in the face of adversity and what success means. My sense of success at that point was, are we succeeding, first of all, in making COVID testing accessible to all? Were we succeeding in reducing the pain that people were experiencing when they were about to travel? Were we helping people who are employers who were struggling to decide whether or not to call staff to work or let them work from home because of a reported incident? Can we help them make that decision faster? And those to me were sort of the objectives of why we were doing COVID testing. It was not COVID testing for COVID testing's sake. And so once as they stepped on our toes, we found it important to fight back, and we fought back. I got the biggest lawyer in town who had defended the president of Kenya at The Hague to fight for me. So it was not, we didn't go into it with our eyes closed. We went into it with our guns swinging. And boy, I tell you, it created a national stir. We even discussed at the level of the National Security Council between the UN and Kenya and said, what happened to this company? They were doing such a great job. And the government of Kenya replied that, well, there was a Nigerian who was doing illegal testing at the airport. And I was like, I'm not a Nigerian. I just think I'm a Nigerian. So these are the kinds of adversities that we've had to deal with to set up and do the right business. But the beauty about it is that, Dr. Manuel, for the first time, we realized that the future of testing is going to be in the home. So in as much as we were affected on the COVID side, it opened up a new reality that the future. And so we restructured our business plan for the post-COVID market, where now we are the #1 providers of medical testing in the home in both Kenya and South Sudan. And so if somebody has a malaria, somebody has a cough or cold, there's no need to come sit in an outpatient department any longer. You call us, we send a nurse to collect your samples, and we give you your results and send the treatment to the home. That to us is the future of healthcare. And so again, it's another example, in my opinion, of how disrupting a market causes a lot of trouble because people are not happy. We have taken the cake away from somebody. All the big labs were losing market share to us. And they decided that no, they wouldn't sit down, take it lightly. They never saw it as we're doing good. They never saw it as we could partner with them. They never saw it as, well, if that's what they're doing, can we do the same? They decided to attack. But in each case, I would say so far we've been fortunate that each adversity has opened up a new market opportunity. Yes, we lost millions when we were shut down. We lost a lot of millions. We had to discard over $300,000 worth of reagents, $300,000 worth of reagents that we had to discard because of this interference. But it has opened up, if you will, a future for the market that I believe could be the blueprint for how healthcare and primary healthcare is offered in the African markets going forward.
Fascinating. And it looks as you're using the struggles to learn, use the struggles to become stronger, more successful, being able to develop your business in different directions and preparing you for the next level of struggle, which is really what this podcast is about. So really thank you for sharing your experience and your story. If you don't mind, I just want to take you back to the first one you mentioned when you were in South Sudan, having a board meeting, and then with potential investors, and then within a short period of time, suddenly finding yourself in prison, and spending 5 days in prison. And you describe beautifully how that also helped you after getting out to even to make your business and yourself stronger and more successful. I just wanted to dig deep into that experience and ask you first, what you were really at the bottom of a pit at that stage, and you got out and you climbed up the mountain again, so to speak. What kept you going when you were at that point, finding yourself in a high security prison within a short period of time, from a 5-star hotel boardroom with investors, and you're at the bottom of the pit? What made you? Some people would have crumbled. What kept you going? What made you pick yourself up and turn it around?
Sure. So I was very peaceful. Obviously, I prayed a lot. More than I think the last time I prayed that much was when I was in Sacred Heart, when we were forced to pray that often. Otherwise, where we prayed 5-6 times a day. That is really when those prayers come in. I had, you pray the rosary with your fingers. You have no beads in the prison, in the jail cell. You look for all ways to kind of fill the vacuum of lack of human interaction. The transactional nature of life sort of makes the hours go by very fast. When you're sedentary, seated on the floor without a shirt, in a pair of jeans, and you're just in a room with 6 other people and you're looking at each other for 24 hours, you kind of have to look for a way to kind of keep your mind busy. And the first thing is that in any struggle, you realize you think you're worse off. Your situation is bad. But then when you hear somebody else's story, you kind of have to kind of smile a little bit, regardless of the situation you are in. So right next to me is somebody who said to me, he said, "Doctor, you're here. We know you haven't done anything. I killed 15 people. I cut off their heads. And I'm here because if I go out there, I'll be killed." So you're looking at yourself in solitary confinement, in quasi-confinement, and this person is happy to be there because that's a refuge for him. There were other stories that I won't belabor, but then you hear of some other guy who had stolen millions of dollars from a bank and is sitting next to you. And in their stories, you find strength. So I would say part of what keeps you is the theory of relativity and saying, I'm in a bad situation, but mine is not that bad. So that's the first thing. But more importantly, in all of that, the first alarm, when somebody hears, oh, Moka, you are arrested by 6 soldiers, everybody would use the narrative, where there is smoke, there is fire. And so you go into a deep sense of guilt, like, what do people think about me? What is going to be my image? And so on and so forth. And the only thing that makes you sane is your sense of integrity. I have never done a drug. I have never bought even a spoon of drugs. I've never seen cocaine. I only see it in the movies. I don't know what it looks like. So for me, it was laughable that I become characterized as the biggest drug dealer at a national level. It had no correlation with my business. I could understand if somebody said, oh, well, you mistreated a patient, and so you're here. Then there would be some room to even think about, what did I do wrong? I was in a situation where I could not even deal with the charges I was levied with, that were levied against me. And so that sense of integrity is really, at the end of the day, that gave me a sense of calm. And I was willing to lose my life if it came to that. Because when you get into that zone, you are literally disconnected from the world. There is no lawyer you can speak to. There is no advocate you can speak to until their investigations are done. So after a while, they came to say, we've searched your room, we haven't found anything. We have searched your phone, we have searched your computers, we don't see any relation. So now we are trying to get you cleared, but there's a process. So you have to stay over the weekend and we'll get you out on Monday. That's the kind of narrative I was dealing with, right? And so that sense of integrity, in a way, is what has saved me in every situation. Even in the situation of the COVID testing, when the Dubai government complained of tests of patients traveling to Dubai who were testing positive, the head of the Kenya Civil Aviation called me and I said, bring the patient, let's check and see our systems. If we have one patient that we released the tests, we gave false positive, false negative, we're willing to take responsibility for that. That was my immediate answer. I didn't hide. So that sense of integrity in the face of adversity is really, in my opinion, what gives one the opportunity to withstand the enormous pressure. Because imagine you call the office of the president and say, I need help, I've been illegally affected. Somebody leaves the office of the president, comes to see you and say, I just wanted to see you because what I've heard about you in the National Security Report is not a good thing. I mean, literally, you get scared. I had 14 different officers from the national, what do you call the CID, or the DCI, the Director of Criminal Investigations, meet with me at all times of the days, all threatening, well, we have your passport, we're going to deport you. And I looked and I said, do what you have to do. It's your job. My job is to do what I do. Your job is to do what you have to do. Do what you do. If you find a case, deal with it. But I'm fine. Well, can you pay us money? I said, well, I'm sorry, I don't have money to pay. I stood by my ground because I knew without any sense of uncertainty that what we were doing the right thing for the people. And so I wasn't worried at all. Under tremendous pressure, 14 interviews with criminal investigators for doing the right thing. And I wasn't bothered. I mean, the first interview, I was scared. Obviously, I was really scared because you're dealing with guys who could frame you in any shape or form. So I'd say really that sense of integrity. And I think ultimately, as one is thinking about leadership, as one is thinking about the sense of development as a person, and I believe that that sense of development is are we going to do to transform society to make the world a better place than we left it? Because whatever we do, we're just making the world a better place. That's ultimately the pursuit of what we do in exchange for some sort of compensation. But ultimately, it's about making the world a better place. And if in that pursuit, you have somewhere in it a vein of integrity, you're able to weave integrity in every transaction and every conversation, then you'll be fine. That already is success. But expect what I think what I'd like to really share with the listeners here is that as you rise up the success ladder, expect the struggles to be more vicious, more targeted than you can ever imagine. And sometimes the struggle, the target, the fire would come from your proteges. Sometimes it will come from your competitors, and sometimes it may come from the regulators, or sometimes it may come from the financiers. It's almost impossible to walk that maze of business and not expect fire from one of those sources. Your mentee would be the first to throw a stone at you, but you have to keep mentoring people.
You have to keep doing what you do and taking it on the chin, learning as you've demonstrated, developing, and using it in your favor. You seem to have used all these struggles you've kindly shared with us in your favor to take you to the next level and develop a new path for yourself. So really grateful for you sharing all this wisdom with us. And before we conclude, I would like to just ask you to share one do and one don't. You've shared a lot of wisdom today. If you're faced with a major struggle in life, can you share one do and one don't? You may have already shared some, and you may want to reemphasize what you've shared, but is there one thing you would say, do this, and one thing you say, don't do this?
Yes, I think I would be very clear about the one do and the one do not. The one do is when you're struggling, talk to people. The one do not is do not sit quiet. And we are all afraid of being judged. And that's where the struggle kills us and crushes us. Because the average person is so worried of failure that you worry, what are people going to think about me? And in some cases, you think about, what is my wife going to think about me? And what are my children going to think about me? And when you get in that space, that's where you do really crazy things to cover up the shame or the perception of failure. And so once as you say to yourself, I really don't worry about failing, I really don't worry about failing anymore. It's just not part of my thinking. If it fails, it's failed. Would I die? I don't think so. Would I be broke? Yes. Could I go into bankruptcy? Absolutely. But it is nobody's business. That is just okay. I'm not the first, I'm not the last, and that is okay. And the best way to do that is just to talk to somebody. So in either case, in the South Sudan case, the first person I spoke to was the Minister of Finance. I called him and said, this is the situation I'm going through. What can you do? I called the daughter of the president. This is what I'm going through. What do you say? If I had hidden, try to hide away from the shame of being locked up in jail, they would not have come to my rescue. And they helped me recover. Talk to people, but talk to the right person. You don't just talk to anybody, obviously, but really find the 3 or 5 people that you can talk to in case of adversity. And that is part of the leadership mandate. Once as you get to a certain level, who are the 3 people that you can call who'd receive your call in case you're in a situation that I was in. Do not bury it. Do not hide it from your family. I talk about my challenge with the kids, and they're like, Daddy, what happened? I said, well, it would happen to you one way or the other. It is just a matter of when and how. We don't know. So the most important thing is keep your books clean, be straight, and have your circle of friends that you can talk to.
Thank you. What a great note. And this is exactly what this podcast is about. It's about talking to people and people sharing their experience. And you've shared your experience, a lot of wisdom with the listeners. So I'm really, really grateful. I wonder whether people have questions asked or want to get in touch with you to learn about the work that you do, learn about your company, Checkups Medical. How can they get in touch with you?
That's a very good one. I would say LinkedIn, Moka.Lantum on LinkedIn is the best way to reach me. I don't do many other social media for obvious reasons, because it creates an access point for trouble, for more struggles. So I kind of avoid that arena. So LinkedIn is the safest, and so please feel welcome to reach out on LinkedIn at Moka.Lantum, and we certainly can have lots of conversations about struggling and doing business in any shape or form.
Thank you. And we'll put those details in the notes with this podcast. Once again, thank you so much for coming and joining us on this episode and sharing your wisdom. It's been enlightening. I've learned a lot from you, and it's helped me also think through some of the points that I made in the book, which is highlighted in the background here, From Struggles to Success, which is also available on all platforms. Also, please feel free to follow us, this podcast, Struggles to Success. You can follow us through the website, www.fromstrugglestosuccess.com, but also through social media. And if you can also follow myself, Dr. Emmanuel Suitable, and via LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So please do follow us and share this podcast with your friends, your family, and colleagues. It can be life-changing and transforming. As you've also heard last message from Dr. Moka Lantum about sharing, talking about the struggles, and also sharing it with children. Because if children learn this early, they can become better, stronger, and even more successful in life. So thank you again, Dr. Lantum, for sharing your experience, your stories, your wisdom. Thanks to everybody who is listening to this podcast, and we'll see you again in our next episode very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much.
Whoa.